Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
What's up, everybody? This is Jeff.
And Ben.
From Toking with the Dead.
And Still Toking With.
And Still Toking With. Still Toking With is our live show. Yes. You can catch that every Wednesday.
At 7 p.m.
Eastern.
That's
Eastern time.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
If you live in fucking California, it's got to be 3.
No, 4.
4?
Yeah. They're only 3 hours behind.
What about daylight savings?
Yeah, well, fuck that. We'll worry about that one.
Okay, so if you're on the West Coast, you're going to have to look up when 6 o'clock is out there compared to here.
Which would be actually 7 o'clock out there instead of here.
7 o'clock?
Yeah.
Before this is over, I'm going to need a whole lot of serious therapy.
You're all fucked up today.
Another $1 for the swear jar.
I'm always fucked up. You should tune into the show and see really how fucked up I can get.
Oh, yeah.
Well, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
And when you do tune in, you're going to see amazing guests like this.
Hey, what's up? This is Jeremy Palco from The Walking Dead, and this is Still Toking With.
Hi, I'm Larry Kenny, and you're listening to Still Toking With...
What's up, everybody? It's comedian Sherwin Array, and you're listening to Still Toking With on the Dorkening Podcast Network.
Hey, what's happening, everybody?
Hey, Ben. That was great.
Y'all know what time it is. It's time for another kick-ass episode of Still Toking With. Yeah, I don't know. I just added Jeff back because it booted him, and we all came on the screen at the same time. So, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Real quick, though, before we get started with tonight's show, we want to send our condolences to our producer, Mr. Leo Pond, on the passing of his mom a couple days ago. So, you're in our thoughts and prayers, brother. If you need us, we're here. So, but look at that. We're all on the screen at the same time. So there's the voice in my head, Mr. Jeff down in the corner. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I thought it was one of your zombies for a second there.
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
The man up in the right corner.
I don't know what that video did, but you got.
Hold on.
Man.
Yeah, and my volume is really fucking high.
Oh.
So I'll figure it out. Go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah, I don't know. The video was running fine on this side and on the live. So.
Yeah. Well, that's all right.
It's
a new season.
Us old people and our technology. The man with the flash and all the flashiness up in the corner, our awesome new addition to the family, Mr. Jeffrey Mark. And,
Happy Wednesday, everybody.
As Jeff figures out what he's doing down there, I'll quickly introduce our amazing guest. He's got a hell of a story, but we're not going to talk about that yet. We're going to let him talk about that. Dr. Hal Bradley.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on your show, Ben. Really looking forward to this today.
Welcome to the show. There's another one of our awesome co-hosts, Mr. Dustin Peterson, a.k.a. Jags. If he was watching the intro, he would have saw his funny fine face in the intro. So
at least I'm not getting screamed at anymore. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, you good? You all right?
Okay. Yep.
You sure?
Well, it was weird. It might be the browser because I got this error message that flashed across the screen and said your browser does not support this.
No.
So
it just doesn't like you tonight.
Yeah, well,
what I'm going to say is it's Leo's mom messing with you because she was one of our biggest fans. Like when we started our show 6 seasons ago, she called her son and said, "Oh my God, those guys are hilarious. I love them." And she continued to watch us over every season. So now that she's passed, I think she just came back to mess with Jeff because Jeff likes to mess with everybody else.
Well, may she rest in
peace. Yeah, that's what I do.
Right. So, another kick-ass show. Yeah. Season 6, episode 2.
It's exciting.
And, we're all here.
Yeah, amazing, huh? Hell, I don't know about you guys. Well, I'm in my 70s now, so it's a miracle every day.
Right.
Dr. Bradley, there is so much to you. I think we're kind of fumfering trying to figure out where to start with you.
Right.
Why don't you go back to Mexico and just start it from there and let our friends who are watching and listening know who you are?
Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey. And again, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on your show. This is going to be a real pleasure. And I loved your intro. That was absolutely amazing. And I agree. Let's take it back to 1969. In 69, my brother had been wounded in action in Quezon Valley, and he was in the United States Marine Corps. He was medevac stateside and was at Bremerton Naval Hospital. And so we went to the hospital to see him. And I can remember the anger that was within me because I'm on this ward looking at my brother who had just been shot in combat. And I see a whole ward of all these guys that are like 19, 20, 21 years of age. And you know, my heart really went out to them, and it impacted me real heavily. And at that time, you know, I was 16 years old and smoking cigarettes and smoking weed and dropping acid and living the dream and all that stuff. Hell, it's the 60s, guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, I left that place and was at school, and I got caught smoking a cigarette on campus. And back in the 60s, when you got caught doing something like that, they expelled you for a semester. It wasn't something like a 2-week thing or something, which they do, I believe, nowadays. So anyway, my mother said, well, I'm not going to have some kid wandering the streets, you know, for 6 months. She was working full time, had a kid in the hospital, shot in Vietnam, 2 other younger kids, and just she worked full time, so she couldn't keep an eye on me. And by then, hell, I'm an acid head, I'm a pot head, I'm all kinds of, you know, doing crazy stuff. And she had a friend that owned a mining camp named Anaconda de Mexico. It was in the state of Durango on the Durango-Zacatecas border. And she said, you know, I'd like to send Hal down there and kind of get him off the streets and let him experience this new culture. And I'm thinking, wow, what an adventure. This is really exciting. So a couple of weeks later, he loaded me up, flew me into Mazatlan. Well, we were picked up there by some miners and driven up into the state of Durango. The following morning, we crested into the valley of the mining camp was at. And I mean, it was sparse terrain. It was totally isolated. The village of Walta only had 100 people that lived in the village and only one power pole running through the whole village. So that was my first exposure to an absolute impoverished community. So I'm up there. Ted stayed about a week to make sure I was settled in, and then he took off. And here I am on my own, blonde hair, blue-eyed, 16-year-old kid that's never even heard Spanish spoken, and not a single person in the village spoke English. But what he did arrange is he had a bodyguard to protect me while I was in country, a guy named Mimo. And Mimo was connected. And I know that the man that took me down there was affiliated with the opium growing operations and all of that I became exposed to early on. So anyway, time went on, and I had my own burro instead of riding my Schwinn bicycle with the banana seat and the handlebars like everybody did back. Yeah, you remember those, huh? Yeah. So anyway, now I've got a burro, and I'm up in these mountains, and I have this burro that has every trail memorized. And so I get up some days and I jump on the back of my burro and I'd be taking off up into the foothills, and I would come across these fields that had absolutely beautiful fields of flowers. And I didn't know they were poppies growing opium. I just saw fields of flowers, and in my innocence, you know, I started talking to the people that were out there cutting sap out of the bulbs and harvesting and stuff. And I remember also we had the Chouari Indians who lived up in the mountains, and they were the marijuana growers. And back in 1969, marijuana was like selling fentanyl is today. It was just so horribly
right.
So I got invited into the village, and I would sit around at night, and they would take corn husks and they would roll these big old bombers. It's kind of like the old Cheech and Chong bamboo paper we got off the albums back in the day, where you could put a whole ounce in the damn thing. And then they would just smoke this and pass it around, and we'd all get higher than a kite. And I'm looking at them, and they look like they were back 1,000 years in time. And I'm wondering, God, I hope they don't eat me or something, because they look so primitive. You know, I'm a kid out of Seattle, Washington, for God's sakes. But anyway, as the story goes, I witnessed my first execution about 2 months in country. We were in the cafeteria, and I was sitting with Memo, and everybody feared Memo. He carried a machete on a back strap on his back that he could pull out real easy. He had a side piece on him, and he was definitely knew that if something were to happen to me down there, that he wouldn't come out of it alive. So he was very ruthless. We're in there, and Bimbo and I are having breakfast with some of the other miners, and this guy walks into the table next to mine, pulls a gun out and blows this guy's brains out. I mean, not 5 feet away from me. And I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, Jesus Christ, what the hell am I in here? I'm just a young kid. The worst I've ever seen is a fist fight at a keg party. And Memo escorted the guy out of there and came back and immediately grabbed me. He says, listen, whatever you see down here, you never talk about. And up until 5 years ago, when I started writing novels, I never ever did talk about it. So I had about a year there of extensive training in a very unique culture, a culture of narcotics, massive narcotics production and growth. And I took that knowledge back to the United States, and I can remember telling me in the village, he said, "Aquí en su corazón vive la sangre de la ciudad." In your heart now pumps the blood of this village. So someday return to us, come and see us. So when I got back stateside, I was still disturbed about my brother having been wounded in action. So I went and got a GED, joined the United States Army 2 weeks after I was 17. I went basic, AIT, airborne school. Hell, I had wings on my chest, paratrooper wings, when I was still 17, and headed overseas to Germany to do my tour. Once I got released from the Army, I was using the GI Bill in Sacramento at the Sacramento City College, going to school. And winter break came. This is the winter of 74, 75. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go down to Walterio. I'm going to go visit my paisan, my family, my friends, and kind of, see what's up. Well, I got down there and I spent my 2-week holiday there. And during that time, they had convinced me to come back with a Ford LTD. And they said, well, we want you to take marijuana into the United States. And I'm thinking, God, that's going to be a cool adventure. Why not? Nothing but pot. And so I went back down on the next break, and they took my car, put it in a chop shop, cut all these compartments into it, packed that car with 80 kilos of marijuana, and I was off to the races. Now, I'm barely 20 years old. And I remember going up Highway 15 to Highway 2, where I entered in Nogales, and they had sprayed deodorant on my face. They taught me to wear sunglasses that weren't too dark, but not too light. Drive a car that's nice, but not too new, not too old. And they said, whatever you do, when the inspector comes up to your window, look him dead in the eye, stay calm. You're just down there for the day in Nogales picking up souvenirs or whatever, and they'll get you on through. Well, after 5 years of doing that and more than 70 border crossings, I never got caught once. But in 79, the ball game changed. By then, I'd been picking up marijuana. I'm getting ahead of myself here. By then, I had 2 other friends recruited out of City College. So I was running 3 cars down there now. And we were buying up all the pot in the Chowari Indian village, and we needed more pot. So what we did was Mimo had a friend who was over in Jalisco, in the state of Jalisco in Guadalajara. So we head over there, and just outside of Guadalajara, there was a ranch compound where we went. And I met this guy named Rafael Carla-Quintero. I'm sure you've probably heard that name. And then I met this other guy named El Chapo. And that's a picture that I think I sent you guys. So 42 years ago, I met El Chapo, and he was just a little pot guy at the time. We all were. And Rafa was the one that instituted the growing of that massive marijuana field that was so big you could see it from space. The one that DEA agent Kiki Camarena infiltrated and took out. And but at this time, we're running pot. And then in 1979, cocaine was introduced to the now newly formed Jalisco cartel. And there was this guy named Angel Felix Gallardo. And I always called him Patron. I didn't call him by his name, but he became the man that took all of the cartels, the major cartels of Mexico, and formed a syndicate. And they were all answering under his table. And I was down there in this time in the late 70s to early 80s during the growth and the changing from going from simple family criminal organizations to actual cartels. And I remember getting my first plane. I had a 172 Skyhawk I bought in Ukiah, California, just north of San Francisco. And I could fly myself and it'd take me about three times to refuel just to get to Arizona. It was such an old plane. And later we picked up a 185. But my first crossing, I went to the Yaqui reservation, which is half in America in Arizona, and then the other half in the state of Sonora in Mexico. And we had a farmer in Hermosillo, and about 200 miles north of the farmers of the city of Hermosillo, they took bulldozers and they cut out a little airstrip for us. So here we are. We're not picking up pot no more. This is my first time. And everything went from HUDs and handshakes and, yeah, you're one of the kids in the village, to AK-47s, extreme violence overnight. The money we were dealing went from a few $100,000 to into the millions instantaneously. So the entire culture shifted and changed. And guys, this is probably 81, 82, 83 when I was experiencing that. But my time crossing borders and doing international trafficking ended in 82 for myself. They needed someone up in the United States that was compadre, paisan in their heart. And here they have this guy that's blonde hair, blue eyed, grew up in a village. I understand the culture. I understand the significance of the chain of command. I'd just gotten out of the military, so I had all of that discipline and training to go along with the love that I carried in my heart for the people that I was involved with. And I remember them telling me, we'll have someone come up and see you. Now, I went back to Seattle. I left Sacramento. And I'm up there, and I get approached, and they're bringing me, at this point, starting out with 100 kilos of cocaine, which wasn't a lot, but it's a lot for this part of the world back in that time. And this transgressed into, within less than a year, quarter to a third of a ton of cocaine at a time getting dropped off. So what I did was I built the corridor for them up in the Pacific Northwest. And as a result of building the corridor, I became the primary target of Operation Northern Exposure. What happened was in, I believe it was 89, or no, excuse me, I'm sorry, 1990. One of my guys went down and they caught him with 38 kilos of cocaine in the trunk of his car. And when they grabbed the kilos, they thought they were doing 2 keys of coke, a small bus, and here's 40 keys, but they had the soccer ball symbol on them. So at this point, the Department of Justice went, oh my God, we've got a Pablo Escobar representative up in the Pacific Northwest. Now I was with the Sinaloa drug cartel, but Pablo Escobar was the one provisioning those kilos. And it was his signature to Americans is basically, fuck you. Here's my soccer ball. Everybody knows that he likes kicking soccer balls. But what it did do was it enacted a multi-agency investigation on a federal level, because they say Don Pablo's got somebody marketing his cocaine up there in the Northwest. So they had unlimited funds, unlimited resources. And this is probably my second year into the cocaine trafficking up in that part of the country. So by now, I am recognized. I am known. And, the whole ball game changed so radically and so dramatically. And with the introduction of cocaine from the marijuana industry in our life at that time, lessons were taught. I've watched multiple executions. I've witnessed a beheading. I've seen 3 guys doused in gasoline in the desert and gas poured on them. I mean, all kinds of crazy shit. And one time, my friend Pat Grady, may he rest in peace, helped me build the organization up here in the 1980s. And he was killed by the cartel here 3 years ago. They found me here 5 years ago and hit me, but I survived the kill order.
I was going to say that you actually survived the kill order. Yeah, they found you and shot you point blank, right? More or less. They
stabbed me. It was multiple stabbings.
Oh, stabbed. Sorry.
That's okay. It was in the head. And anyway, what happened was when I think it was 1993, I went down to Culiacan and I said, "Look, guys, I'm wealthy enough. I can live the rest of my life. I don't want to risk my newly married wife with a brand new baby. I don't need to do this no more." And, "Oh yeah, no problem, compadre, give me hugs and handshakes." I come back to the Northwest and there's 350 kilos and 2 soldiers sitting in the driveway of my home where my family lived. So because I had an underboss status, I was a kingpin, of course. And I had the ability to tell the soldiers, "Look, we're heated up here federally. Get that load the hell out of here. I'll be in touch in a couple of days and let's just cool things down." Well, the next day I walked into the U.S. Attorney's office because I realized at that point that the gravity of the game and the changing of the rules, there was no way in hell I was going to be able to walk out of that lifestyle. And I knew that I was going to have to take on a drug cartel. So when you're taking on an enemy as powerful and as wealthy and as big as something like that, you need to come at them with a bigger baseball bat. And that's why I walked in. I made the decision. And right away they're going, "Oh my God, it's Hal Bradley, the primary target of Operation Northern Exposure." And I mean, they've got him walking in the door, and the U.S. attorney told my attorney and myself, "Sit out here for a little bit. We got to make some calls. This is unprecedented." So by that late afternoon, they took me into this giant conference room with a table that almost had a vanishing point. It was so long. And they had alphabet agencies, CIA, DEA, U.S. Customs, IRS. They had them all there. And they said, okay, well, you're going to have to disclose. And they already had a stack of information on me anyway. They knew who was there.
Right.
So I went ahead and I debriefed. And by the time that I was done, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop. They had no idea, no concept of how much cocaine I was transporting through there in that corridor, all the way into Vancouver and then up into Alaska. I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds of kilos at a time. And they're thinking when they got that 38 kilos out of the trunk of that car, oh my God, we hit the jackpot. Well, you got to realize, take yourself back in time. In the early 1990s, there wasn't anybody in this part of the Northwest corridor moving that kind of weight. So what they thought was, wow, 40, 50 keys a month, instead of hundreds and hundreds of kilos a month. Well, what that did was that made me a viable asset to the Department of Justice in that instant. And they said, look, you're looking at mandatory life. No hope for parole. You've been around murderers. You've been around all of this level that you're at. I mean, they haven't conspired, I was told by one of the agents, to over 700 kilos of cocaine, where they had witness testimonial and everything ready to go to put me away and shut the door. But what they saw, guys, was they saw a guy that didn't have to walk in. That wasn't some rat. I had been in Folsom Prison in the 1980s on a 3-year small-time cocaine bust, and I never cooperated, didn't tell him. You take your hit, you move on with life. That's the way it is. Mm-hmm. But this gentleman, this was different. This was a complete transitioning of life. Yeah. And they were not going to let me go. And I was really, really affected by it, because some of these relationships might go all the way back to a 16-year-old kid in a Chouari Indian village in a small mining camp. And the love that I've always carried for all of them has always been, and to this day still is. And
Dr.
for the
Bradley,
record, yes.
Dr. Bradley, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Your story is fascinating, and this is the right moment to ask the question.
Okay.
Because listening to it, because I'm finding this so tremendously fascinating.
Right.
Listening to this. So you're brought up in the Pacific Northwest of the United States.
Yeah.
You're sent to Mexico to get some life experience.
Yes.
Anywhere along the way here, did it ever occur to you that the things you were doing were either not good or not good for you personally, or were you having such a good time that you didn't care?
That's a really good question, Jeff. No, you know what? Everybody was smoking pot in the 60s and the early 70s. And I didn't see marijuana as something that was going to take down my country or make me a traitor to my country, by no means. That's why I kind of gave you an emphasis in 79 when they brought the cocaine in, how we knew at that time the industry became serious. It wasn't what all of us at this.
We who were used to hang out at Studio 54, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're more than welcome, pal.
Right.
But anyway, the transitioning in that moment that I walked in forever ended my corrupted life. It became an awareness that this is beyond serious. They're gonna hit me. So what we had to do is get my family out of harm's way. My wife, and by then I had a second kid being born. We got him out of the region, an undisclosed site, and then we rolled up our sleeves, and immediately I started working south of the American border. I wasn't running around up here telling on all the boys and girls and trying to cut a deal to save my ass and hurt everybody that I loved and cared for. That wasn't what this mission was about. This mission was to take on a very large drug cartel in Mexico and hopefully survive it. Now, over the years, I spent 15 years working in the cartels down there, and I've witnessed a lot of executions, torture. I've seen a lot of very, very bad things. So I was fully aware of what would happen to me in the event of discovery. But I didn't care at that point. It was something that I needed to do just to cleanse it. When I was a kid, guys, I was a Cub Scout. My mother was a den mother. I was a Boy Scout. My father was a Scoutmaster. All my brothers, we all grew up that way. We came up with honor, integrity. We worked hard as kids. We were decent kids. But what happened is a cultural shift at a time, 1969, at a time when the world was facing a revolutionary shift. And then I go down there, and here I am. I'm going to be the gringo I can get marijuana down here for $20 a kilo. Jesus, God almighty. It was just fabulous for being a college student and selling it on campus and da 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 da. You know, you can see where the story goes.
Right.
But anyway, getting back to walking in, that was in 1993. I had already been redeveloped. I came out of Folsom Prison in 89, went back home in 90. I was contacted in 1990, forced back into the business, no choice whatsoever. It was a plane ticket for me and my wife, flew to Las Vegas, wined and dined. And oh, by the way, we're going to send a trunkload of cocaine up there. We need you to get a hold of your friend Pat, reactivate this, and this is what you're going to do. And I'm going, wait a minute. You know, I'm out of this business. And they literally laughed in my face. You're never out of the business. You're used up until you're no longer. So anyway, I went ahead and right away I was formulating how the hell I'm going to get out of this. But the money was coming in so gigantically. And Snohomish County Records here in Snohomish, Washington, your audience can look up my name and they can see the massive amount of real estate holdings, all the business licenses from my various companies. I mean, I literally exploded in a financial a world, if you will. And it's very hard to break away from that because you become so used to the post of power. You become used to the position of where you're standing in the community and how people, they reverence you. You know, you're a very successful person. And people want to get to know you and be a part of you. And that's a hard ego thing to shake in its own right. But the time came to get out. And like I said, I went to Culiacan. I sat down at the table with my brothers, guys I've known for decades. And I really believed in my heart that I would walk until I came home to a third of a ton of cocaine waiting for me. So that was the triggering catalyst that took it out of me. And the next 19 months, guys, I was operational in Mexico, throughout Central America. And I mean one side of Mexico to the other, one end to the other, because I was inserted by people that were cooperating in that country. And they could go, okay, Bigotes, this guy is a grandote in Canada. And I had another name, and they'd say he's a big coke dealer. We've been dealing with him for years. So they're giving a stamp of approval. So I was spread out, and we were working on other criminal organizations in these various countries. 19 months goes by, did a fantastic job, put all kinds of big time people out of business. And I'm up before the judge, and I was facing, you know, a mandatory life. But because of the work that was developed as a result of my coming in, the judge sentenced me to 8 years at the request of the U.S. attorney. So I'm off. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm off to prison, and this is October 19th, 1994, 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm in a holding cell waiting for to catch a flight on Conair and head to Inglewood, which was my first FCI. And I just couldn't take the burden of it anymore. And I dropped to my knees in that cell, and I looked up to the heavens, and I says, God, you need to come in here and take a hold of this, because this is, you know, I'm just lost everything in my life. I've got a contract out on my, you know, all kinds of bad things are going on.
Right.
Well, an inmate walks into my cell. It was open. He comes in and he kneels down on one side beside me. He puts a hand on my shoulder and he starts praying. Then another inmate walks in on the other side of me, and he puts a hand on my other shoulder and he starts praying. And gentlemen, I got to tell you, that was the moment of my conversion. And I just felt all of that breaking, every bit of it. I was no longer angry. I was no longer concerned about anything. I had a new mission in sight. And that mission was to learn every single thing I could about this faith that had just entered within myself. So over the next few years while I was in prison, I left Inglewood. I ended up real sick. I was dying. I had a terminal illness. My liver was shutting down. Ooh. So they flew me to Springfield, Missouri for federal prisoners there. And I volunteered for an experimental drug. And here I am 30-something years later, alive. But while I was in there, they trained me as a hospice counselor. So I think you got some of the articles, right? Yeah. So here I am. My job in federal prison was to aid and assist fellow prisoners through the dying process. And while I was doing that in those death rooms, the next 2.5 years, I would cram my seminarial studies and eventually became formally ordained. I graduated. Assemblies of God was my teacher. Well, Johnny Gambino was there at the time, and Johnny Gambino knew that I wasn't some fake guy, Bible thumper or whatever. They all knew the calling was real. And I took Don Riccici, who was the Don of Las Vegas. He was up in the terminal wards where I was working at, dying, and I became his hospice counselor right to his last breath. And so they said, you do this favor for us. You did this big favor. What can we do for you? And Johnny Gambino actually gave me a phone number on Long Island, I guess it is, outside of New York, to make a call if I ever get back there. And he said, "Our family will treat you and take care of you." And about that time, John Gotti shows up. He's got cancer in his liver, his neck, his throat, that area there. And I'm a certified hospice counselor. So I've got this tag on my shirt where I can move throughout the prison. And I was actually able to see John Gotti a few times. And what it was is I became a messenger deliverer between Johnny Gambino and John Gotti. I mean, you know,
I was waiting for that.
Yeah,
Right?
how crazy is that? You know, I'm just trying to do my time. And then Leonard Peltier shows up. And by the way, I see that he's getting pardoned. I'm so grateful to see that. But Leonard shows up, and then the sheik that originally tried to blow up the towers, the blind sheik, he was there. And he would be out on the yard, and he would be doing his prayer rugs with all of his followers of his faith. And they would be out there until he started calling missile strikes to be thrown on top of the prison. Well, they put him in a cell, and they never let him out again after that. Because, I mean, you know, these guys are radicalized. But anyway, This is my journey. I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden I get orders, and I'm told, well, you're cured. You don't have no liver disease anymore. So we're going to ship you off to Leavenworth, Kansas. So they load me in a bus. They drive me over to Leavenworth, and I get entered into the system there. And right away, I plug into the education department. I'm working in there, teaching guys how to get their GED and all of that. And one day I get called up to the warden's office. And I'm wondering, what the hell is going on here? And I go in there, and there's these two guys in suits, and they're standing in there, and they're from the Department of Justice. And they said, "How'd you like to get out of prison? We would love to have you come to work for the Department of Justice." And gentlemen, they brought me back to Seattle, put me in front of a judge. And a few weeks later, and I think I sent you the document on that trip to Costa Rica. Yeah. A few weeks later, I'm down in Costa Rica buying 500 kilos of cocaine on a dope deal in a whorehouse. And here I am. I'm an ordained pastor who just got released from prison, getting ready to go into the ministry world. Bishop Semi LaFall of Full Gospel Pentecostal Federated Church Association brought me into the church. They reordained me. And 3 years later, in that church, I was installed as a senior pastor of my own church. But at the same time, guys, I'm jumping off on missions. I'm flying into foreign countries, and I'm in these really heavy, sinful, deceitful, oh my God, lifestyle, like the kind I used to love and enjoy, you know,
Right.
career. Yeah, you know. And I ended up doing 17 years undercover. And I a few years ago was graduated to become a hospice chaplain. I still do hospice work. I still do it to this day. But 2018 was my last mission in Mexico. Chapo Guzman was being moved stateside on that particular week. And the neighborhood that I was in Ciudad Obregon. I went down with one of my neighbors here. His mother had died, and I didn't want him to go alone. So I traveled down there. And I didn't have to report in, which we do with the Brownsville Act. Anytime an agent or representative of our government's going undercover in their country, we have to let them know, which is basically a death sentence for us anyway. But because I was going down on a ministerial capacity, I was able to make contact with the people I was going to check out anyway, and didn't have to let anybody know. But they started shooting people right in that neighborhood where I was at. I mean, they were dropping bodies right within 4 or 5 houses where I was. So they hide me in this bedroom for a day, and the following day, they put me in the trunk of the car, drive me through two cartel checkpoints, and they take me to the Ciudad Obregon International Airport, fly me to Tijuana. I get off at Tijuana, walk across the border. I met up with the team there out of San Diego. That night, they debriefed me. The following morning, I said, "Guys, I'm done with this. I just can't do it no more." So as a contractor, I always had that right. I could quit at any time that I wanted to. But guys, 17 years, that was what I felt that I owed, because it's one thing to say I'm sorry for what I did, but it's another thing to show you're sorry for what you did. And to you guys and to everybody else in my country, I truly felt that I owed a debt. Man, I moved tons of cocaine in the Pacific Northwest back in the day, and I destroyed tens of thousands of lives, and I carried that karma with me.
You were making amends.
I was making it right. That's right. And this is the true sin to redemption, which constituted the writing of all the books I've done. It constituted opening up the Crisis Victory show. There are so many stories like ours, guys, as we came up and did stupid things and foolish things in our youth. But, you know, as you get wisdom acquired in later years of life, you look back on it and you go, there's got to be a restitution that I can do to show how very sorry I am. And I just can't do it no more. So as a contractor, I always had that right. I could quit at any time that I wanted to. But guys, 17 years, that was what I felt that I owed, because it's one thing to say I'm sorry for what I did, but it's another thing to show you're sorry for what you did. And to you guys and to everybody else in my country, I truly felt that I owed a debt. Man, I moved tons of cocaine in the Pacific Northwest back in the day, and I destroyed tens of thousands of lives, and I carried that karma with me. And
Right.
So that's who I am today. You know, I'm my 19th year. I've been in my same house here 21 years, but 19 years I work in trap houses and I work in the homeless community. And, you know, I work in environments and I'm a pastor and I'm a recognized pastor by everybody. So I go in these trap houses and I'm watching little girls sitting on a couch waiting their turn to go in a back bedroom to trade their flesh for a $20 hit. And at the kitchen table, there's 3 kids sharing the same needle, shoving it into their arm. But everybody knows that I don't judge them. I don't have any of that in my heart at all. I'm simply there as support for them. And it gives them an option to go ahead, brother.
Again, the perfect moment for the next question.
Right.
Yeah.
I had one. I had one pop up too. But go ahead.
Come on with them, brothers.
Do you, in your religious community, ever feel that you are judged because of the company you keep or because of your past? Because from what I know of Assembly of God and Pentecostal churches, and I'm not judging anything here, just how they work.
Yeah, they're strict.
Very, very, very conservative and keep to themselves and don't really mingle much with the kinds of folks you have a heart to help. Do you ever get a pushback from the religious folks who are connected with you?
I absolutely love that question, and I'm glad it's come to fruition here. Bishop LaFall, when I first came out of Leavenworth, within the first 24 hours, he came to the halfway house where I had to stay a few months in. And he told me, he said, you know, Minister Bradley, he said, I saw you in a vision. Now, bear in mind, gentlemen, this is a Pentecostal church where, he's got over 50 churches across the United States that he installed. I'm the only white Caucasian minister ever ordained, ever. It's all black, full gospel Pentecostal. Mm-hmm. And he said, but I saw you in a vision. And you know what's amazing, gentlemen, was when I walked into the main church the very first time, I had seen that church in a dream myself. So that was the connection. So they never judged me. Instead, they loved me. And I became, they just knew, you know, everybody that knows me, you guys are a distance from me, but the people that are around me can feel the true calling within me instantaneously. They know that I am a man of God. And so, no, I don't get judged. Not at all. I can't recall a single element where anybody that's ordained has ever once judged me. They're more fascinated with it. If you want to know the truth, they can't go in those environments. The people that live in trap houses don't trust anybody. You know, they're slinging dope. They're doing things that are illegal constantly. And yet they would let a total stranger, a minister, walk in their door, sit at the table and watch everything going on and never, ever have a problem with it. And, you know, guys, this is my 19th year of doing that.
Right.
And I'm finally done now going to the trap houses. It's just too dangerous. And
right. So my question was, because of everything that you went through at an early age, all the murders, the tortures, the things that you saw, do you think that played a part in why you were so easily transitioned into the hospice side of things? Because it takes a certain person to be able to watch somebody die.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been present with over 60 passings, so
right.
that I just did one last week. So that is a good question. I think that the type of violence that I survived, as you know, while I was undercover, I was captured, I was tortured, and I was horribly rescued. I mean, the way they came and they blew everybody away to get us out of there. And I can remember wiping body parts off my shoulder and the side of my face, and still live with those nightmares to this day. I was also kidnapped in Culiacan when I was operational down there for DEA. I was down to buy 3,000 kilos of cocaine off a general in the Mexican army. And somewhere in transit, they found out who I was undercover. So they drove me off the road. Now, this is Mexican federal agents, but they're on the cartel payroll. They grabbed me, and what they did is they took me to a hard site to debrief and find out what I knew before they were going to take me out and whack me. The 2 guys that were in that car with me, guys, they were killed. They were Mexican nationals, and they were beaten to death. But when I got rescued on that one, I could hear in the distance American voices yelling and screaming, but not out of fear. They were yelling, trying to locate me. And I remember when they came into the room, they pulled the black bag off of my head, and I was horribly beaten. And they had a picture in a plastic envelope, and the guy was looking and said, "Are you Hal Bradley? Are you Hal Bradley?" And I couldn't talk, but I could nod my head and say, yeah, but they couldn't recognize me from the picture of me they had,
Right.
you know, and so I've had a couple close encounters on the law enforcement side, but there's things I can't talk about on your show or discuss with regard to how I came up in that business.
Right.
But yeah.
Dr. Bradley, this just hits me. Forgive me if I'm going a little far afield here.
No,
but it's about faith also. I'm a very spiritual person, and I respect and love everybody's faith, because
Amen.
I don't know how I would have gotten through my life without it. Do you feel there are certain persons like yourself, perhaps me, because you don't know my story, but I've known some of the folks you've known who are seasoned? When I say seasoned, I mean beaten, because we're being made, because we're here to love other people out of their pain. Do you think there's a connection with that? Because I'm seeing so much of me in you.
Thank you for that. I take that as a compliment, and I feel it in you too, brother. I think what happens is the moment that we recognize the truth of who Jesus Christ was, or whoever you follow. My associate's degree is in chaplaincy, so I had the foundation studies years ago on that. But with me, the moment that I believed, I never looked back, and I never transitioned back. Instantaneously, I became hungry, wanting to know more, learning more. I was like Saul on the road to Damascus, where they took him into that room and Ananias pulled the scales off his eyes and he became Paul instantaneously. And that's how I kind of like to refer to my transition in that jail cell that night, waiting to catch a flight on the way to federal prison. I mean, I instantaneously transitioned, and that's been over 30 years ago, gentlemen, and I've never looked back, and my faith is strong. Yeah, I know you. We can feel it within one another because the truth is discernible, you know. And but I wanted to get my doctorate in the business, and I made it all the way to almost just below my master's level while I was in federal prison. And when I got out, I completed my studies in April of 2004. I received my doctorate in pastoral counseling with an emphasis in hospice ministry. And I'm a certified hospice chaplain now instead of just a hospice counselor. So I still pursue exactly where I need to be. And I love being with the dying. I love being able to hold a hand and caress a shoulder and lean over there and tell them, if you will, that this is your opportunity before you pass into that other part of that which we are, to be able to download everything you need so you can close this door and get ready to enter. And over the years and so many passages I've dealt with, it just becomes so natural, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And like I said, last week I took another one through it, and last month I had a lady that was on life support that I've known for decades, a friend I love very much, and her husband was in that room with her all by himself, and he was really going through it. But a calmness and a comfort entered the room when I came in, and went over and kissed her on the forehead and pulled her hair back a little bit and held her hand and kind of gave him a hug and let him know that, hey, it's all going to be okay. And they believe it because we believe it. That Jeffrey is the true it's like working in trap houses and everybody's high on meth and heroin and all kinds of crazy stuff, and they're paranoid of the world. Well, why the hell wasn't I getting accosted or attacked? It's because, Jeffrey, that they could sense it and they felt it and they did believe it. And then over the course of years, it becomes evident. And right here at my house, guys, I have people brought to me that have just been raped. I have overdose cases brought here because they've got felony warrants on them, so they won't take them to Providence Hospital. They'll run them over to Pastor Bradley's house because he's got Narcan kits and he'll revive them. And or like rape victims, I'll get them into my house. I'll put them on a couch for a day or two, and they don't have to trade their flesh to have a couch to be safe in, and they know that. And as a result of that, oh my God, it's been an amazing 19 years serving the community.
Wow.
So that's the transition, guys.
Yeah. I will say, if we ever do meet,
yes,
which I hope we do someday.
Yeah, me too, Ben.
Don't kiss me on the fucking forehead because I will freak.
I promise I won't, brother, but I'll probably give you a hug and say, hey.
I'm okay with the hug.
And then I'll smoke a big fat bong. I'll smoke a big bowl with you, bro.
That'll work. Yeah.
And just for your audience knowing, I'm a PTSD patient, and I've had licensed medical marijuana through the VA for 20 years. So, you know, I'm not, good for you, brother. Have one for me. Yeah.
Dr. Bradley, I'm one of the founders of Marijuana Anonymous. For the 10% who get addicted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you get addicted.
But for the other 90%, of course, marijuana can be used to help people with PTSD,
Yes,
with medical issues and reactions to medications. I'm never against marijuana. I'm just there for the people who can't use it. And
No, I get that. I like that.
You, sir, are an amazing author and very successful at it. Can we talk a little bit about your books?
Yeah, I'd love to. Over the course of the 17 years that I was operative, I would be in and out of embassies in various countries, and I'd always get the pleasure when I come from outside the wire and get debriefed. I go down to the cafeteria, grab a bite to eat, and maybe a team would come in, SEALs, Special Forces, whoever. They'd come in, but we never sat around other normal people. We would always, so we could kind of sense who we were, So we would all grab over in a corner at a table or something, and we would talk about the things that we could talk about, because there's so many things that are classified and you can't talk about. Right. But nonetheless, over the 17 years, there were virtually dozens upon dozens of conversations, and I wanted to give recognition to the law enforcement agents and the military teams that I've worked around and been around, and so all of my books are dedicated to those kind of people. But they're action adventure novels. I fictionalized them, and I write them under fictionalized because this way no one's going to get arrested or in trouble. So,
including you,
including me,
right?
That's true. There's a lot of information that are in there, but it describes the various types of torture techniques and tactics. It describes human trafficking, which I've been around. It describes such a variety of bad things. So I created Harold Brandon and his sidekick Manny. And you'll really get a kick out of this. Manny is the name that was the agent that was captured with me in El Salvador when we got grabbed. And we were being moved in what they call dry camps, prison camps. Every few days they would move us because he was involved in Salvadoran intelligence services and was a principal, automatic, we got to save this guy type in his country. So they moved us constantly throughout the jungles down there, but we were tortured every day. We went through some very horrible things that I don't want to get into. 8 months ago, guys, I almost committed suicide. I did. And I've never even had those thoughts before, but I get tired of waking up in the middle of the night being in the jungle. And I really struggle with that. But instead, I called the VA suicide hotline. And to give, thank you guys. And it means a lot to me. I wear a bracelet on my wrist that has 22 on it, because 22 veterans commit suicide every day in our country. That's the average.
Yes, they do.
So I'm an advocate for that.
Just real quick, before we go further, just for the folks watching or listening, if you want to know more about Dr. Hal Bradley, make sure you check the show notes up above or down below, depending where you're watching or listening to us. Everything you need to know is there.
Thank you.
Bringing up the suicide prevention, if you check our show notes, we have links and hotline numbers for suicide prevention, for addiction, for just about anything you can think of. They're in the show notes. There are people out there that will listen.
Okay, well, like I said, brothers, 8 months ago, I was walking down the hallway to commit suicide to end my suffering, my mental battle, if you will.
Right.
But, it's because I knew the VA had that. And I've been a PTSD patient with the Veterans Administration for, 15, 16, 17 years now. Sometimes, these things never leave us, guys, but what you have to do is have the capacity to pull it out, take a look at it, talk to it, and then put it back in, because it never will leave you.
But it shrinks it down to its right size.
A manageable size. I think about executions that I've witnessed. I think about children that I've seen in rooms that are being ready to get loaded into vehicles and shipped north to be sold. I think about so many things, and you just don't live 15 years in the cartel world and not have damage, if you will.
Right.
I've literally drove under overpasses in Ciudad Juarez where there were bodies dangling that were mutilated and burned. And I'm on the cell phone talking to a friend and I said, well, I got to kind of get around this one here. I got a low body, I've seen so much of that. And the entire community is sitting there at night having candlelight vigils with thousands of pictures of missing relatives and family members, and just feeling their pain and their suffering and the strife that up here in our country, we don't see those kind of things. But, back in the day when I was operational, and before being operational, was a smuggler myself, the villages I go in, all of them had stuff like that. And it's a sadness that doesn't depart so easily. But I think that through my faith in God and the wisdom of surviving so many things like that, it was the catalyst that made me so dedicated to being the type of pastor that I truly am.
So, Dr. Bradley, are you today the active pastor of a church?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Not of my own church. No, I'm still with Full Gospel Pentecostal. I'll stay with them forever. But I have had my own church. I was installed, and I think I sent you some paperwork on that too. My certificates of installation and all that.
Yep.
Yeah. I've had the church, but what was happening was on Wednesday nights I'd always prepare for my Sunday message, what I would deliver to my congregation. But then I get a call on Thursday saying, pack a bag, you're on your way to Bolivia, you're going to go down and do a drug deal or something. And it became so conflicting to me that I went to my bishop a number of years ago and said, I need to take a sabbatical from this. So I removed myself from my post as senior pastor and stayed with outreach services instead, because I know where my trap houses are. I know where that picture you had of me that I saw on that you're going to put up, showing me with my white tab collar shirt. I was unloading a truckload of food in an alley when that picture was taken by one of the people and given to me. And that's my church, brothers. My church is my home, and in an alley or in a dope house, that's my church. Now, Ben, go ahead, please.
Your personal family, your wife and children, are they thriving and healthy?
My wife is deceased. She
I'm
died.
sorry for your loss.
Thank you. She's the mother of my children, and she's gone, but she's in heaven and resting. And my children, two of my children, they're in, I don't even know their last names. They were adopted out during a time that I was going through, and I'm glad they were, because of the protection that is afforded them. I still have $100,000 contract on my life. People have come to collect. As you know, June 6th, June 7th in 2020, I got hit right here at my house, left for dead. It was a kill order that failed, which is a miracle of God in its own right, because I remember the last knife strike on the top of my head, and I felt my head popping, and I started drifting into darkness at that moment, and I thought that was the last moment of my life. But I want to tell you something, Jeffrey. You talked about your faith. Let me tell you what it's like to know that you're going to be dead within seconds. A certain calmness and a certain peace comes upon you. It came on me so strong, and I was full of joy. I mean, this all means nothing in that moment as you're getting ready to leave your life experience and enter into that which is what we were before we were manifested in the flesh. And I believe it because I've now experienced it. And I've faced death a few times. I've been waiting for the bullet to take me out. I've been through that stuff. But that's nothing at all like when you're laying on the ground and you feel life slipping away, and you have those few moments to go, well, you know what? Been a hell of a ride. And I mean, I'm not going to miss this. I'm anxious to go to that. And I felt a compassion within me that I had never felt before as I was laying there dying. And I have a fiveplex, and one of my tenants, he was the one that came out and grabbed me, and 911 did in, and they were able to save my life. But I don't know if I showed you or not, Ben, when we were sending all the stuff to document this crazy story. But there's a sheet of how many doctors and surgeons and people that were involved the night that I was brought in.
Yeah.
And I think
you did send that.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. And I was in a coma for a day and a half. And when I woke up, the first thing I did was forgive the contract killer instantaneously, because I know what it's like to have a name and an address on a piece of paper handed to you. I've been there, done that. And right away I came out of it. I wasn't mad at him or angry. He didn't know who the hell I was. He was just doing what he, given his circumstances, has to do. So that also, Jeffrey, was a confirmation to me of just exactly how sincere my belief truly is. There was no anger. There was nothing but compassion and understanding. And that, gentlemen, is the way I've been since October 19th, 1994 at 3:30 in the afternoon, when I surrendered everything to that belief.
Dr. Bradley, you are a very brave and very love-filled man.
Yes, I am.
It is an honor to meet you.
It's an honor being on your show and with all of you, gentlemen. And I want to thank you for letting me know. Go ahead, please, Jeff.
I've been pretty quiet.
Yeah, you have been tonight.
Go figure, huh?
Well, I want to bring something up, because you rekindled, and don't take this in a negative or a bad way, you rekindled a very dark part of my life. Okay.
Interesting.
I went through a very serious cocaine addiction. Okay.
I'm
It was
sorry.
not pretty. It went on for, it's not you, went on for 4 or 5 years.
No, I'm
Changed
sorry
my
because
life, obviously.
I'm sorry that you went through it, Jeff. I destroyed probably 10,000 families in my years, so I get it. And I did feel that the moment you brought that to the table. Please share that. I want to hear it.
You
I
know,
do.
well, I survived it. Okay. My calling came after I broke into my dealer's home and stole all the coke.
Okay.
And I was hunted down and had a gun put to my head. You know what I mean? So I've been there. That was
I know what you mean.
I call it I call it a great awakening. You know what I mean?
That's
so
the
listening
perfect
to your
word, Jeff.
story, I mean, you know, it was, I mean, what I went through in comparison, listening to your story, obviously is, you know, I'm kicking a peanut down the road here, but
I don't take it that way.
you know, you rekindled some very, very difficult feelings. And I think that in some way, everybody that's gone through something like that needs to re-feel that periodically in their life. So thank you for that.
And
Well,
thank you.
I
You know,
think
Jeff,
they have to, sorry, I think they have to feel that every once in a while to remind them of the things that they went through to put them where they are today.
You have to keep that stuff green.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and if you remember a few minutes ago when I made the comment about when we're dealing with those devils, Jeff, like how this was a trigger to bring back those memories. Sometimes we have to pull it out and talk to it and make peace with it and then reinsert it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you did in this moment. And I'm so glad. And I thank you for letting me help you by sharing. And the story that I've shared with you is truthful. It's factual. It's documented. And I'll tell you something, guys, I live with it every single day in every breath of my life. How horrible, the horrible things that I have done and the horrible things that I have survived. But you know, God says to be doers of the word, not hearers only, plain and simple. So instead of saying you're sorry or whatever, or feeling bad about yourself, get out there and do something about it instead.
Yeah.
Right.
And I really want to thank you for having me on your show today. It impacted me too, Jeff. It's not easy to keep talking about those things, but
Dr. Bradley, if you're
you know,
go ahead.
You know, it's something that you know, is necessary. I mean, unfortunately, I think that you know, I tend to try to keep that buried and hidden away. I don't, you know, it doesn't come up very much. You know, to anybody. I mean, Ben knows my story, obviously.
Well,
Sure.
yeah, I've known you 38 years.
He was part of the story.
You know,
No, I met him shortly after.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, no, the only one that was there was my wife, who's still my wife. So, you know, she went through all of that darkness with you.
Beautiful.
You know,
I'm so glad to hear
things,
that.
Things happen for funny reasons, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I wanted to thank you for bringing that back up because I think I needed to relive that a little bit.
Well, I will say this, Jeff. Not many people knew about it, but with the viewership that we have now, and this being live, I think a lot more people know about it now.
But it's okay. I don't
just
whatever.
You know what, Ben?
I'm just giving you shit. I was breaking the tension, giving you a little shit.
No, it's a good thing.
Whatever, you know?
It's a good thing because look at him today. Look at him today. And look at what he was when he went through that and how he just shared that and how it was so many years ago. But, you know, Jeff, somebody will benefit from that because they're going to hear that comment and they're going to feel that ping within themselves. And this is what I do every day of my life. I deal with people that feel that ping.
You know,
so
well, hopefully that just helps somebody out there that was listening.
That's my point.
You know,
The four of us are survivors.
Yeah, and I'm hoping the show tonight helps one person.
Me too, brother.
You know,
that's why we're all doing this. My podcast show, The Crisis Victory Show, is showing people that have survived extreme crisis events, no matter what it is, but they come out on the other end in a humanitarian scale, and then we become the servants. And that's what this kind of show was tonight for me.
I'm gonna plug the Crisis Victory Show for numerous reasons. One, Pete Turner is producing this. Pete Turner is
he's my co-host. He's actually my co-host.
He's actually a friend of ours. He's been on the show numerous times. He was on New Year's Eve with us. But recently, Pete has brought his show and the shows that he's producing to, yes, the Dorkening Podcast Network, folks. So you can find all these shows in the show notes, up above or down below. So
he was just talking to me about it this morning, and Pete's very excited about being on this. And as we develop and progress with Crisis Victory Show, we certainly would like to be a part of this too. Of course.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think what you're doing is amazing, and I think it's going to help and benefit getting certain messages out to a world that is so desperate for messages like what Jeff just shared. How that I felt that, Jeff, when you said that. I get it. That's what I do for a living every day of my life, is deal with people that have triggers that go off constantly and put them back in extreme traumatic circumstances. So I'm glad that you brought that into this.
Thanks a lot, asshole.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Bradley, April 1st, Jeff willing, I'll be 36 years clean and sober.
I'm so proud of you, man. That's an amazing.
Have me on your show. I've got stuff to talk about.
I would love that, and let's set that up. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Jeff, if you want, any of you want to come on, Jeff, I'd like to hear your story. I'd like my world to hear your story, because the people that are now starting to subscribe, and that I get hundreds of messages daily from people that aren't even subscribers, that are very familiar with my work, and they need to hear these success stories so they can one day have their story on a podcast show showing their. And congratulations, that's a lot of years, Jeffrey. That's impressive, because it isn't that easy.
Thank you.
That is not an easy journey.
No,
brother.
it's not. No.
Stealing coke from your coke dealer, I love it, bro. Been there, done that, and had it done to me. We chased them down too, pal. They weren't as lucky as you. So many years ago. But that's the purpose of our shows, right, guys?
Right.
That's the purpose. It's wisdom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe we can prevent somebody else from going over there and robbing some drug dealer's house and getting his ass blown off for doing it.
Right.
You just don't know.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. I can guarantee you that.
Well, it's not a good idea, especially in today's day and age.
Especially,
in the
times that we're in.
In the 80s, 90s, you could have gotten away with it and gotten your ass kicked. Now, your family's burying you.
Yeah, that's true.
Getting your ass blown off ruins your evening.
And that's before we get off the air, I want to say to anybody working in outreach services, do not be interested in following my path. Don't go to trap houses. Don't go into some of these homeless camps. Do not do it, because you're not trained for it. You're not qualified for it. And you're going to end up in a situation. Because I constantly get people saying, "Oh, Pastor, take me with you. I'd like to go sit in a dope house and talk to these young people." No, you don't want to do that, because for one, they're not going to let you in. And if they did let you in, then they've got a mischievous purpose of doing that. This is a very dangerous ministry that I've been in for 19 years. So I don't want to influence somebody on your show to go run out of here and go out there and go see if they can knock on a door at a trap house and get themselves in a situation where we're not going to be able to get them out of it. So please hear me on that.
Right. So with that being said, we are a little over time. So Jeffrey, Mark, any last questions for our guest?
If you ever get to Southern California, we have a meal together, Doctor.
You got that coming, Jeff. I'd love to come and see. And I do get down there from time to time. And I'd like to say thank you to all of you. I'd like to say God bless you, God keep you, God be with you, and with everyone watching this show. Feel touched, feel loved, and feel blessed. Thank you, gentlemen. God bless you.
Excellent. Jeff, my Jeff over here, any last questions for our guest?
Yeah, I came up with a new one I want to ask. And I think, you
Please.
were a kid, obviously. Jeff, did you ever own a rodent?
A rodent. Yeah, I had a pet raccoon named Critter. I've had dogs and things like that, and pet rabbits in the 4-H club when I was a Boy Scout.
Okay, all right, so that's a rodent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. All right.
So
Interesting.
with that being said, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show this evening. So I'm going to wrap us out. Just hang tight till the show ends. I mean, you know how this all works.
Oh, yeah.
But Dr. Hal, where do you like interacting with your fans on the social medias?
Do I like interacting? Absolutely. When people reach out because of the circumstances of my show and its content, they're reaching out of need, not so much curiosity. So, yeah, I absolutely love it.
Okay. And where can they find you?
They can find me at crisisvictory.com And if they're interested in reading the books that I've written at drhalbradley.com.
Which both of those folks are in the show notes up above or down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. My flashy brother.
Yo.
Yes, sir.
Where do you like interacting with your fans on the socials, my friend?
Anywhere I can find them. I'm
Amen.
on Blue Sky. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on your electric toothbrush. Just
woohoo!
Reach.
Just make sure you change the batteries.
Yeah, I too am on all those,
God.
by the way. I am on it, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube,
Yep.
all of it. Yeah, so I get that. I think that's what you were wanting me to.
No,
Yes.
no, the websites were fine because all your information is in the show notes. So if they wanted to reach out to you on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, it's in the show notes.
And besides which, if I have to change the batteries, it means I've just had a very good time.
Right?
And of course, my podcast, Jeffrey Mark Plays Ella, where I play the music of the great Ella Fitzgerald every week on a theme.
Oh, I love it. I love that.
Tell you all the insider stories of how the music was made and why it's important. So,
Wow.
and the two
Amazing.
books I'm working on, and being here. I love being here.
We love having you here.
So, to all my friends out there, God bless and have a happy.
It was an honor to see you tonight, Jeffrey. Thank you, brother.
Hef.
Oh.
Hefe.
Yeah, like always, you go to stilltoken.com or Token with the Dead on Facebook. And Jeffrey, I wanted to say I spent a couple of hours this afternoon hunting for what I know I have for bling that I was going to wear.
Let's
the
see
problem
it.
is the only one I found, it would be below camera.
I love
it
it.
wasn't gonna work anyway. You know what I mean?
I love it.
Yeah, just go to stilltoken.com and all our other links and all that stuff is right there for you. Easy peasy.
I love the name of your show, Still Token. That fits so perfectly to us older guys, don't it? Huh? Come
Right.
on.
It does.
Right?
It does. I love it.
So,
well, and I got a haircut today too.
I saw that. I got one yesterday. See? Yeah, see? So, but in all seriousness, we want to thank Dr. Hal Bradley for coming and hanging out tonight, telling his story. It's an amazing story, folks. And we only touched a little bit of his story. I mean,
Oh yeah, not a lot of it at all.
check out some of the other interviews that he's done out there, because we're not your standard Q&A. It's just that kind of that simple. You know, as always, to Hef and Geo for hanging out and supplying the comic relief and the flashy bling. But to all our veterans and first responders,
yes,
we want to thank
God
you for
bless
doing
them.
what you do so people like us can come up here and do what we do. Stay safe. We'll see you
Amen.
next week. And we are out of here.